Hello, this is Phil Lavery with Riada, and this is part of our ongoing customer interview series. Happy to have with me this morning Theron Feist, and Theron is with the Peabody Institute, which is part of Johns Hopkins University. Good morning, Theron.
Good morning.
Glad to have you with us. Theron, why don't we first start with, tell us a little bit about the organization you work in and your day-to-day role.
So I work for an organization called the Peabody Institute, and we are one of 9 academic divisions at Johns Hopkins University. We're the only art school at Johns Hopkins University. Peabody Institute consists of 2 primary areas. One is the Peabody Conservatory, which is a college of music, which grants degrees all the way up to doctoral degrees. The other is the Peabody Preparatory, which is a community music school that serves Baltimore. And actually, now that we're doing online programs, we really serve students all over the world. My role at Peabody is the IT director. And so I manage a staff of about 12 IT professionals, and we cover a broad set of services for Peabody. We have 3 main areas. We have systems and support area that deals with the network and deals with the help desk and sort of primary first tier customer support, client devices on the network, things like that. We have an academic technologies area, and we have a software and data area. So we pretty much cover all the technology needs of the Peabody Institute.
Fantastic. And obviously Peabody and Johns Hopkins is got a tremendous reputation. Tell us a little bit about the software platforms in place and at JSU and specifically the Atlassian applications and any third-party apps you want to mention. We're going to have a little show and tell here in a second, but give us a little bit of an overview of systems in place.
Sure. So I've actually been at Johns Hopkins for a little more than 15 years at this point, and through 3 or 4 different positions at different organizations at Johns Hopkins. And I've been using the Atlassian, Confluence, and Jira suite for probably almost 12 of those 15 years, starting in enterprise IT and continuing through work I did at the School of Nursing at Johns Hopkins. And then when I came to Peabody, brought with me the Confluence Enterprise Wiki and Jira for project management and issue tracking. So we're using a combination of Jira and Confluence. Jira Service Desk has really taken off where we are. And I would actually say the Confluence Wiki has really taken off as well. So we have a really broad set of users, not just in IT. They really started out as IT tools. And as we in IT use those tools and people saw us using them effectively, more and more of the other departments here at Peabody wanted to use the wiki for documentation, meeting notes, knowledge management. And now what we're seeing is a high degree of interest in the Jira Service Desk for tracking work, for gathering and sort of accounting for what you've done. It really started out as our primary help desk tool or service desk tool for us to collect issues, to collect service requests. And it's really expanded to the point now where we are using it in human resources, we're using it in our business office. And one of the probably key examples that we would look at today which is kind of interesting and unique to Peabody, is our use of Jira Service Desk and Insight in our piano maintenance department. So they keep a piano inventory and they have to maintain this large fleet of pianos that spans across this campus and a couple of other campuses. Key add-ons, now we use a lot of add-ons. We've really extended both Confluence and Jira Service Desk using the great add-ons that are out there. So Insight is a key add-on for us for really being able to take Service Desk and Jira and turn it into more of an ITSM kind of tool. We'd really like to, as much as possible, apply ITIL best practices to what we do. But what we found with Insight was kind of the same thing we saw with Jira, Service Desk, and Confluence, is that when people saw what we were doing with it, there became interest from other areas. And so right away, someone from piano maintenance thought, well, hey, we could use this to inventory all our pianos and track the maintenance of all our pianos. We've had similar things in, we won't really look at them specifically today, but in our security department for doing things like managing keys and access to rooms and security cameras and things like that. The other add-ons we're using are extension for Service Desk and queues for Service Desk, which are also nice add-ons, and we'll demonstrate at least the way that we've extended some of our Service Desk forms using the extension add-on.
Okay, that's great. Really appreciate the overlay or the overview. Before we jump in, was there a particular challenge that you were faced that in the business supporting the teams that you took into account when you built what you're going to show us? And maybe for other listeners, just a real quick explanation of how you went about reviewing, evaluating, prototyping JSD with Insight.
Yeah, so I originally looked at the Insight tool because I knew I needed to have a CMDB component of our Service Desk and our ITSM solution. And we had actually been migrating from a different tool, which did have a CMDB, but I think it wasn't quite as easy to use and quite as elegant as what we have with the combination of Jira and Insight. Certainly, I discovered, so we knew we needed a tool that did inventory, but the realization that we could really kind of couple it with the Service Desk and with Jira in general made it even more powerful for us. So being able to do things like associate maintenance records or history of incidents with specific items in the inventory system, I think is really powerful for us. And then even going beyond that, realizing that we can extend Service Desk by incorporating custom fields that associate with particular items in the database. That kind of opened up a world of possibilities. And it's to some extent what's led to things like us being able to build a piano maintenance system using Jira and Insight. And it's really helped us with the management of all of our IT assets.
Great. Okay, so let's turn it over to you. Why don't you take control of the screen, show us what you've built, and maybe before you jump too far in, just give us a quick overview of what it is that you're going to walk us through so we can follow along.
So I think I'll start with showing the piano maintenance system just at a high level. And then if you want me to, I can also show you a little bit of our IT inventory. The piano maintenance is, to me, is just kind of a neat thing that you might not have, another organization or an IT organization might not have thought of building. So it's kind of a neat tool. But we also use it for all of our IT asset management and what we're trying to do with ITSM. So I can show you a little bit of each. And Phil, I would just depend on you to kind of prompt me if you want me to move from one to the other. I can start with piano maintenance. Yeah,
let's start there. Go ahead, take the screen. Let's go full screen. I'll kill my video here. So
sounds good. I'm starting sharing now.
Okay, perfect.
And I'm going to turn off my video as well, so we just see the screen. Okay. So what you should see in front of you now, and we should see on the recording, is just the front page of our Service Desk. And I think it's a pretty good place to start. A tool that really started out as just our ability to collect IT service requests has expanded into the business office, concert operations, which I'm going to hone into now, and human resources, and likely will continue to grow into other areas. So as soon as we had the inventory system in place and we were using it, we were approached by the piano maintenance team at Peabody, who had been doing all of their piano maintenance requests on paper and really didn't have a great way of tracking the history of their requests, the state of their inventory, the kind of state of health of their pianos, And they came to us with the idea that we could use this inventory tool that we had called Insight to start building out the inventory, and that kind of expanded into building out electronic piano maintenance request forms that are aimed at their customers, as well as their own kind of internal only piano repair forms. So what you see on the screen now is various forms. You see 2 piano related forms. The bottom piano related form is actually only on display to people who are in a specific group, security group, which is allowed to see this ongoing piano repairs form, which is a kind of a simplified version of our piano, our customer facing form. I'll give you a quick look at each of these forms, and then I can kind of show you what the inventory looks like. So if I'm a faculty member at Peabody and there's a piano in many of our rooms, almost all of our rooms, and they get used very heavily, because of their heavy use, they need ongoing continuous maintenance. And so this form was put in place. You can see we've embedded a couple of images here to kind of guide people to how to submit the requests. And then you can see you can decide which maintenance type you want. And what you're seeing on the screen now is actually a custom field built from our Insight inventory. So each of these items is actually part of our metadata that we keep in the Insight inventory. And I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. So this lets them, pick the maintenance type, describe the problem. And then a key thing here is they actually can identify what room the piano is in by picking a room from the inventory. And then based on picking that piano, picking that room, they actually have a limited set of choices based on the piano that is located or associated with that room. So when this request is submitted, it contains all the information that the technician needs in order to know where to go, what piano to work on. And it also logs that information and the request on the inventory item itself, the piano. So it's very useful for our piano maintenance team. And then there is a second form that is used that is really an internal only form for technicians that contains similar information. They pick the location of the piano, the room the piano is in from the inventory. They pick the piano itself, and then they can pick from expanding checkboxes. And this is actually built, the 2 add-ons to Jira Service Desk that I mentioned before, the Insight add-on for custom fields and the extension add-on for custom fields allows us to do this, where I can, based on selecting a checkbox, it actually expands a set of other options. So they can give very detailed information about the maintenance that was done on the item without having to type a lot of information. They do this on their mobile phones, and so it's very, very straightforward for them. And then if they need to, they can put a description. So let's see, I think if I jump over to my service desk side of things, or to my Jira Jira Core interface side of things, and I jump into Insight, we can look a little bit at the piano maintenance inventory. Phil, do you feel like I'm covering what you want to cover?
Yeah, this is perfect. You're going to go to kind of how you set up your schemas. Love to see a little bit about how you're using the Insight visualization tool just to get a sense of relationships. But this is great. Keep talking. It's a good story here.
Sure. So really the heart of that request system is the inventory itself, and you can see by the readout here that we have 249 pianos in our inventory now. And if you know anything about pianos, I don't know a lot, but I know that a Steinway is a very nice piano, and Yamaha is also very reputable. You're talking about millions of dollars worth of pianos. So it's, it's amazing now that they can actually track all of these things electronically and track their health, where we did it all on paper before. So my base view in here is really a list of pianos. And so location is always something I look at, whether it's, and I want to have the location column available. But you can see we also have access to various other information in the inventory about these items, and we can show those columns. So another really key thing that we built out, which we can also use to visualize how these pianos kind of lay out, and this is kind of a core piece of each of the inventory, the object schemas or inventory pieces that we use, is the notion of location. And so we've built out the buildings on our campus, the rooms on our campus, and then we're able to associate the piano with the correct location. And Phil had mentioned the ability to visualize these things. And so we do have the ability to kind of visualize the relationships between these items, and we can go into the room level and actually expand that and view sort of the relationships between items. It may be more compelling to look at the network version of what I did in our IT inventory than this, but it is very interesting to be able to visualize the items. The other thing that's key in here was the ability for us to build out really flexibly anything that we wanted to. So, you know, it's because of the way, and it's sort of like Jira, it's like almost endlessly extensible, that we could build out almost anything we wanted to. So I would have never thought when I purchased the Insight product that I was going to build a piano inventory. I thought I was just going to do an IT inventory so that we could kind of follow best practices for ITSM and CMDB. But because of the fact that it really almost becomes like an application development platform, and we can build out this database with any set of fields and relationships that we want to. And you can kind of see that a little bit here with the fields that are available on the piano object. And the other key thing to note is that it wasn't an IT team that populated this. We worked with the piano maintenance team to build out the fields that they wanted, and then they populated this entire thing. The other thing that they do, which I don't think I've even mentioned to you before, Phil, is that they printed labels for every single piano with a QR code on them. So they're really working towards the ability for someone to be able to scan the QR code and very quickly identify the piano in the inventory.
That's neat. That's very cool.
So we will probably continue to expand this to, excuse me, I just flipped the screen there. We will probably continue to expand this to help them do more and more things like track the spare parts that they use for the pianos. And you can do some very interesting and even more sophisticated things with you know, using workflow triggers and functions to you know, possibly do things like decrement the amount of parts they have in inventory when they use a part for a specific repair. Things like that. Anything else you want me to cover in here, Phil?
No, I think that's great. I think you've given us a great walkthrough of what you've built. Like all the extensions that you've showed us, the visualization is nice. I can imagine, you know, IT team visualizing, you know, a server down and then looking at all the downstream services that are affected from that in the visual view. Really great walkthrough. Let's go back to video, and we'll just wrap up with a few questions that I'd like to pose.
Sure, sounds good. Okay.
Great. Theron, just a couple more questions. Thanks again. Give me a sense of, you know, what you've built, and, you know, how would you assess the overall value that it's contributed to the business? I don't know if you track specific metrics, if not specific metrics. How's it made your job easier? How's it made the support folks easier? Just give us a sense of what it's meant to you.
So I would say right now we're still at the point of it having a huge amount of potential for us. And I do use it pretty much daily basis, multiple times a day, to get information that I need. In terms of, you know, it's like any system, it's still the challenge of getting everyone on our team to use it consistently, use it accurately. But right now, I would say we're pretty robust. Our IT inventory is really starting to mature, and so I think the next steps for us are some of the things that you mentioned, which is starting to look at and understand the relationships between tickets and systems to ensure that. I mean, one of the things that's been really nice for us is we have an inventory of PCs, and so we can look at, it's very easy for us to generate a report that shows us when warranties expire, to do things like predict our spend for the next fiscal year on computers. That's pretty straightforward. But really the next evolutions are taking advantage of the relationships, looking at systems that may have ongoing problems and issues related to them. Also being able to look at users and track what's happening with different users in the system. So yeah, I think we're starting to really take full advantage of it. I think a tool like the piano inventory at this point might be a little more mature, but that our IT inventory is on the cusp of giving us really great value.
Great. Thanks for sharing. That's a lot of potential ahead of you. So maybe lastly, just any lessons learned, any best practices that you want to share for others that are going to go down a similar path of considering how to get more out of Jira and Jira Service Desk and are considering Insight?
Yeah, I would say, if you're using Service Desk, definitely take advantage of the plugins. I mean, they add a huge amount of value, and using a tool like Insight has opened up really a world of possibilities, not just within the IT group, but also within other groups. And that's really been, I think, one of the most interesting things for me is starting to build IT as kind of a model for how we can collect and requests for work and track the time that we spend on work, and then also with tools like Insight to be able to understand the assets that we have and how they relate to that work.
That's great. Good. Well, let's wrap up here. On behalf of all the Atlassian teams and all the folks at Riada, really want to thank you for the investment that you put into the product and making a lot of happy users on your side, and it being a great tool for you day in and day out. So thanks for sharing, and we'll stop here and we'll be back in touch soon. Thanks, Theron.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.